Tēnā koutou tātou katoa, ko Craigieadon te moanga, ko Talathlin te awa, no England me Wales aho, ko o te rangaho matua o Te Arai Research Group, ko Merryn Gott toku ingoa. I will just get my slides up. And as a non-designer, I can certainly say that they are not as flash as Daphne's, even though they probably don't have any mistakes on them. It's great to have this opportunity just to talk with you a little bit about the work we're doing trying to put communities at the centre of rethinking palliative and end-of-life care, and why we think creative methods are the best way to do this. And so I should start by thinking about, why do we need to rethink palliative and end-of-life care? What's going on? And we've heard a bit of background already, and I could talk about this for 15 minutes in and of itself, but I will limit myself to 3 main points. Firstly, need for palliative care is increasing rapidly in most resource-rich countries. In New Zealand, it's been estimated that the number of people dying with palliative care need is going to almost double by 2050, and already our systems are not doing that well. So we really need to relook at how we're providing palliative and end-of-life care. There's an increasing recognition that a lot of palliative care isn't provided by hospices or specialists. It's provided in the community, through primary care, and also by families. So we do a lot of work trying to support family carers in this space. And the other area that we're increasingly interested in is aged care. And if you're a woman, you might like to know that once you hit 65, you have a more than 50% chance of dying while you live in aged care in New Zealand. So, we've all got a vested interest to get some of this stuff right. But the other big gap we have in New Zealand is that we know very little about the service user experience of what end of life is like. And this is Barbara Broom. She was the consumer on the Palliative Care Advisory Panel, which I was chairing when we did a review for the Ministry, looking at what's going on now and what we think should happen into the future. And one of the things Barbara and I were really keen to try and rectify was the fact we know so little about what people's experience is. We know so little, and we know very little about what matters, and also their voices are just invisible. So as a research group, and this is some of us, the Terai Palliative Care and End-of-Life Research Group, we see one of our key priorities is to actually make visible and make heard the voices of people who are experiencing end-of-life issues on a daily basis. And we're a group of about 10 to 15 women. We are open to men, but no men have asked to join us yet. But, maybe that will change. I think it probably speaks to the position of nursing and the position of palliative care rather than anything more sinister. So this is us, and we come from very, very disparate backgrounds. And I think actually that's what's worked really well. So we've got people from design, from psychology, sociology, clinical backgrounds. I'm a geographer, which people find amazing, but that's my original background. But what we're all united by is a social justice mission and a focus on addressing equity. So our real focus is on addressing access to good palliative and end-of-life care for those people who don't get to hospice. And that sort of is our primary focus. And we're particularly interested in issues of gender, in issues of cultural appropriateness, sexual orientation, all sorts of intersecting inequality. And the other thing is that we're very fortunate to be supported by an amazing kaumātua group who bring so much expertise to us and challenge us all the time. And one thing they've helped us do is to develop a framework, an ethical framework, which underpins all our research, whether that is research that's kaupapa Māori, so led out by my Māori colleagues, or is Māori-centred, so led out by myself or some of my other non-Māori colleagues. But what it really does is it makes us reflect on power within the research relationship, and I think that's something we've talked about quite a lot over the last couple of days. And it really lends itself to participatory ways of working, where our research participants are positioned as experts, and we take a back seat, and our job really is to be able to listen to and harness their expertise. And what I want to do in the time I've got is to kind of show and not tell. That's something my children's teachers always say to them about their writing: you should show and not tell. So I'm going to provide you with a few examples of some of the ways in which we've been working creatively to make visible people's stories, and then to get them involved in thinking about, what do they need within their communities to actually make things better for family and whānau at the end of life. So the first example I want to give you is a digital storytelling project. I need to mention my colleague Lisa Williams, who's in the audience, who led this project together with our Māori research fellow, Dr. Tess Moika-Maxwell. And it was a really exploratory project. We hadn't done digital storytelling with Māori. We had to work to try and see, is this an appropriate method? And how can we adapt this, the digital storytelling process, which obviously originated in the States, to the cultural context for Māori. So we did work with our kaumātua. We did some digital storytelling workshops. And I just want to show you one of the stories, and hopefully you will agree that they're a very powerful way of enabling people's stories to be heard.
We used to go fishing in the fish shop. We come from the seaside in Whangaroa, where we were used to having kaimoana, but living in the city, our only option was to fish in the fish shop. This is where our nightmare began, in May of 2004. Letihia slipped on the wet floor, and we couldn't help her to stand up as she was in terrible pain. We sought immediate medical attention from the GP, X-rays and CT scans. The diagnosis was aggressive lung cancer, metastatic. Both our worlds crumbled. How could that be? She was a non-smoker. A second opinion confirmed a worse diagnosis. Maybe she had 4 to 6 weeks. I loved her deeply, but it was time to shift to a different mode of quality care. I was a kaiawhina with the He Kamaka Ora Ngā Māori Health Services of Auckland District Health Board, and it was time to use those skills in my own home. Coordinating my whānau as kaitiaki wasn't always easy. We had whiteboard for medication charts, roster sheets for family members, 4 caregivers for each of the 3 shifts. Nieces cooked, brothers greeted visitors, did karakia. My sons and 2 other nieces handled transportation and hospital visits. It was a beehive, but a beehive of love. Tears were banned in front of Letihia Oma. Letihia ignored the 6 weeks to live and waited for our younger sister Anne's 50th birthday in October. Days later, she was admitted into hospital for the last time. The ward surged with family members, bidding her a final goodbye. Now she's returned to Waihaka, Pauaka Whakahua Urupa, and rests there with her son John. She can fish any time now.
Oh, let's come back to the band. Okay, so I'm sure you can see that there's lots and lots of different themes that come through in just that one story. And we use the stories a lot in our teaching, but what we also use them for is to disrupt conversations. So we see one of our roles is to, enable people to have these really difficult conversations. So some of the feedback we've got is that they've been shown at Marae to open up conversations with kaumātua about how they want to approach end-of-life care within their communities. And without the sort of resource and the story as a basis for that discussion, actually people weren't prepared to talk about these issues. So that's just one of the ways in which we're using them. And then I wanted to give you another example, which is of how when you work with communities and use participatory methods, you can end up with an end product which is completely different from what you as a researcher think people want. So this was a project, again, led by Lisa, and this particular part of it, our Pacific colleague, Dr. Offa Jews. And what we were trying to do is to support caregivers to develop new resources around family caregiving. But we had quite fixed ideas going in about what people might want. You know, we'd read all the literature. People wanted leaflets. They wanted maybe little videos about how to lift people, you know, things about services. So when Lisa came to me and said, we want to make a music video, I was like, oh my goodness, okay. But what had happened is that the Pacific work group of older women caregivers had said that actually what they really needed was something that had music, because that was culturally appropriate. And what they really wanted to do was to raise awareness of the work that older women do in family caregiving, and to actually get younger people in their community to realise that they had to step up and help. So they decided that the best way to reach that community would be through age-appropriate music. And they wanted to work with a hip-hop group. And obviously, again, I knew nothing about how to get hold of this sort of performers, but they knew all that already. All we did was to let them do what they wanted to do. And so I'm going to play you the end product, which I'm sure you will agree is far more engaging than a leaflet would have been.
I love that lady until she died. I tried my best to do it. What I promised to God, I will look after until she died. Forget about the other thing. Make her happy and carry on until she gone. This is how I love and how I do the looking after. And I'm so happy. She died very peaceful. Love each other. This is it. Yeah. No one's perfect, but all you have to do, just try.
If you let me, I'll take care of you. And you can hold it down for life. Cause I can be your sunshine. So everything will be just fine. I promise things will be alright. We'll never let nobody down. So let's hear you say, oh, yeah. Get back to the ones that really care for you. And always look out for the ones that who was there for you. Though sometimes I feel like this life just ain't for me. I gotta stay strong, and you know I always stay true. You see, families forever, loyalty is undenied fact. Love to my people, let them know I always have their back, even through the worst. You know that I will stay strong, united as we stand. Divided once we all fall. You see the life that we live in, when we always find a way from situations that we given. We gotta stay ahead, and we always stay driven. One thing we never do is we never give in. So all my people, throw your hands high. If you love someone, you stand by. And you cater for their needs and promise to be the shoulder they lean on through the hard times. Yeah. And we can hold it down for life. Cause I can be your sunshine. So everything will be just fine. I promise things will be alright. We'll never let nobody down. So let me hear you say, oh, 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 yeah.
I think in the interest of time, I'll just pause it there. But you can see just how engaging that is as a resource, and how it took us to places that, as researchers, we just didn't think we'd ever end up. And it's been played on Pacific Radio and used during some sort of Pacific Awareness Week at the library. It's been played in churches, just as a way, again, to try and get conversations starting and happening. Okay. Oh, no. Keeps wanting to go backwards. And so just the third example I wanted to give you is something that I can't share yet because it's having its premiere at the Show Me Shorts, which is playing in Auckland, Christchurch and Wellington in October. But it's one of only 8 Kiwi films that's been chosen to be included. And I should acknowledge our colleagues in the Faculty of Arts, Suchi Katari and Serena Pearson, who we do all this, or a lot of this work with. And this was the end product of a project I led funded by the National Science Challenge, looking at social isolation and loneliness amongst older people. And again, we wanted to produce something at the end which actually we could take into communities as a basis for talking about loneliness, because this is one of the main themes that our older participants talked about, is stigma, and the fact that we within our communities all have a role to play in challenging loneliness and in promoting social connection. So we ended up producing an animation called Elder Birdsong, and all the older people are represented by different birds, and we worked with our kaumatua to make sure that kaumatua were sort of appropriately represented. And Rima from Hunt of the Wilder People, who played the mother, if you've seen that, she actually voiced the tui, which was really exciting. She looked after her mum with dementia, so I thought it was an important project. So yeah, if you're interested, you can go along and see that as well. And that's the first time we've done animation. Went to a fantastic workshop with Yvonne yesterday, who's somewhere. Yeah, so we're now thinking about moving into research poetry, working with Victoria on something like a graphic novel. So trying to think, really creatively about how we can get the end products of our results actually into communities, because that's where the expertise lies, and that's actually where most palliative and end-of-life care is actually happening. So I think that's all that I wanted to say. You can check out our blog if you're interested in our work. All the resources are there. You're welcome to use them in any way that you might want to. And we're going to finish with a waiata, as we're a bicultural group. And it's hopefully one that some of the others of you will know as well, so do feel free to stand up and join in. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi mari e, tatou tatou e. Kia ora koutou.